Hi, welcome to Doc Nights. Today's film, The Sound is Innocent, is part of the monthly screening collaboration between House of Vans London and Doc and Roll. And the film is available to watch until Sunday the 18th at 7 p.m. The film asks, when does sound become music? And I'm delighted to have on the panel today the director, Johana, the film sound designer, Martin, and John Richards from Dirty Electronics, who appears in the film. So I'd just like to begin by asking Johana a very broad question here. The film is called The Sound is Innocent. Can sound not be innocent?
Yes, it can. Sound is always guilty, I think. It's the title is the idea about title was more like provocative. Yeah.
Provocative koan.
Provocative koan.
Right, to kind of hook people in and to kind of make them wonder, is sound innocent, and can sound be something not innocent as well? I love how the film explores that, and it feels to me like the film could have only been made by people that have an existing, real deep-seated passion for the subject, to kind of throw yourself into a journey like that to make it. I wanted to kind of go back in time in your lives as to when you first started to think and notice about sound and its relation to music. Do you have any kind of particular memories? Was there like an epiphany or some kind of early memory of this connection that you made?
My father is a sound engineer, and he was working in a Czech radio. And I, when I was a child, I was many times in a studio with him. And I remember that when I was 6 or 5, I tried to make something with tape recorder because the studio was full of this stuff. Maybe 10 tape recorders there was.
I don't remember, I was not there.
And I remember that the simple loop of some sound or word or whatever was for me like music. So it was a loop in a studio of my father.
Amazing. And John, how about you? Was there a point in your life where you first made a connection of sound and music as being sort of somehow connected and different at the same time?
Well, I loved trying to make music using just a single cassette machine. You know, those old kind of rectangular objects, and you get so much hiss when you try to record something. And if you try to do an overdub or record the sound yet onto another tape machine, I think I had 2 tape machines, and the excitement of recording a sound and then building up layers of sound, that was just a thrilling experience, even though the quality was really poor. But that magical moment, I think, kind of hooks you. And I just remembered simple things like that. I lived in a small house. My parents had a piano, but I had a Marshall amp, I think, big guitar amp in the front room, messing up all the kind of household furniture and bits and pieces. And this big amp sat there, and I'd try and play some bass guitar and overdub onto cassette. So those were exciting times, and I remember those.
I have very fond memory of cassettes as well, and that school trick you could do where rather than rewind it, you could put it on a pencil, the loop in the middle, and you could kind of rewind it like that as well. And it was such a thing about an object as well. There's a messiness to cassettes as well, isn't there?
And the sound of tape. I mean, I've made some revisited tape heads and used tape, really long tape loops, which you manually pull through a tape head. I've gone back to tape as well, and of course tape's very much in fashion as well, with lots of stuff being released on tape. But the sound of it is also really, really rich, and there's a kind of depth to it that's really exciting. So, like Johana, tape is also a good point of departure for me as well.
Mm. And Johana, how did the idea first come about for turning this idea into a film?
It was when I met Martin, because he was really deep in the theme of experimental electronic music, and for me it was he really invited me in his world, and for me it was big wow effect.
When I met Johana, she was preparing a movie, and she was interested into electronic music in particular Czech Republic or in the Central Europe, and all these topics started to develop because we kind of started to talk about that we are interested to certain heritage or situation or something, but from the perspective that we are not in the situation of anymore in the West and East. We're living in Prague, which is like, I don't know, 3 hours to Berlin. I spent like 10 years in UK, and we wanted somehow to reflect about that. So we started to discuss about how to turn things into something what is interesting.
And for me, was also very important that I felt that each part of electronic music or experimental music was very separate from the other. And for me, it was strange because for me it was interesting to listen something from GRM or some house music or whatever. For me, it was one.
So, do you mean like all of the different strands of electronic music are one to you? And it's interesting because the film kind of, in a way, traces the history of this oneness, doesn't it? From early kind of like music concrete kind of types of devices to and that have kind of become used as the sort of basis for samplers and computers and Ableton and whatever like that. And I love that kind of universalness that you try and show. But the film has such a distinctive style to the way it's made as well. Did you ever? This feels so important to the story you're telling. I take it that there wasn't a moment at all where you considered just having Talking Heads, not the band, but having talking, just filming Talking Heads, filming it. You've constructed it as a visual, sonic piece in its own right. How important was it for you to tell this story in such a distinctive visual way?
When I start the pitch the project in several festivals or workshops or many people from film industry or producers told me that the topic is or area of my interesting, it's marginal, and I will starting be more and more angry for this, and for me it's like really progressive energy when I'm angry, and I start to developing in my head that the film must have a very strong film language, because I want to present this film in a film industry area. So if the topic or theme of the film is marginal, so the film language must be brilliant.
And did you have any, from making it, I want to open this up to everyone really, through the making of the film, were there any particular objects from the past, for example, that became your favourites, that you got to play with or got to explore?
What about the building itself, Johana? The building was amazing, where most of the shots were taken. Perhaps you could say something about the building.
Yeah, the building. I really love the pile in the movie. So it's my favorite. It was my dream when I bring the idea with this huge pile, and at the end, going into the pile. So it was for me like from fairy tale idea about the building, because it is a space and the pile is also space into this bigger space. So this is for me like important.
John, we see you, like, there's this amazing sort of section near the end where we see you in action with a workshop of dirty electronics, and you really physically throw yourself into this performance. If anything, it reminds me the most of sort of like a kind of dirty electronics Iggy Pop in a very strange way. What is it about you that you sort of feel that the way the body is connected to machines and sound? Because I feel watching it, there is like a kind of a connection.
Yeah, it's all very human-centered. I think the work that I'm interested in. I'm in a fortunate position where I also got to play with and make sound and music as well with Johana and Martin. That was a big advantage of some of the work that I do. I get to play with lots of other people. It's a very social thing as well as a physical thing. So humans tend to be very much at the center of the activity. And I suppose that's going back over some of these possible questions here, but yeah, large group electronic music is something I'm really interested in. And Johana actually managed to ring up a number of different musicians and artists in Bratislava, and we all coalesced in the city and worked together. So it's actually, the music was made there and then on the spot for the film. Martin also got to perform in the actual scene that was recorded, and we also made some instruments from some of the old technology that was used in the set. So Johana was talking about this pile of technology where things fall on it, and there was a room as well full of bits of technology that weren't used, and we were able to get into that room and steal a few speakers and a few tape machines. So we actually did create a sort of semi-real workshop where things were made, as well as the kind of workshop acting like some kind of film set. It was a real excitement working in that kind of crack between fiction and fact and fiction, and a real kind of performance workshop and something that was a film. So some of the takes were quite long. We had to rehearse those, and the camera would roll, and we'd run it pretty much like a performance. So, that kind of having the ability to do something in a continuous way and engage physically with some of the materials and the objects and other people was a really exciting thing to do in the film. We actually did do a number of kind of dress rehearsals prior to that, where I came to Prague, and again, Johana organized some workshops. Some of those were filmed, but ultimately it was just the final shooting where that was the most material used in the film. But there were kind of you could almost call them like rehearsals with different groups of artists that eventually to the final scene, which was constructed for the film. So all those different materials, it was great working with those. I like to, making music on computers can be really lonely. You could think of, why do I like to make music with lots of different materials and not necessarily with a computer? It's bloody lonely working all alone in a studio or in a basement. And I think my interest in working with groups of people stems from that fact of wanting to get out and be more social ultimately. And music's not just about sound, it's about being social as well, and the cultural aspect of that. In addition to the kind of sense of touch, that's something which I've really missed, particularly in lockdown again. This idea that you can't touch anything. And I was very much thinking this at the turn of the millennium as well, in terms of making music and electronic music, and certainly thinking of playing and making sound using my hands. That was something that really inspired me to do dirty electronics, for example.
And there's something you touch on there that's quite political in a way, about the fact that we are, not just for music, but just for our lives, particularly in lockdown, we are reduced so much to computers now. And so much of our, like this, for example, just over a year ago, we would have probably sat in Soho to do this on some nice snazzy chairs, but we're all kind of in our little caves. For you, is there a political dimension to connecting with people through electronic music in a group rather than on computer?
I like that idea of deconstructing the composer, really, and things are devised, mucking about, messing around with things, a kind of playfulness in the music. So it's political in that sense, and ultimately it's about finding those connections and creative moments that you get through sharing things with other people. And it's not, I try not to write about it or talk about it overtly in terms of politics, but ultimately the very nature of it has a kind of political overtone.
And for Martin, how did your interest in sound, being a sound recordist and experimental musician, how did that first come about for you?
By the ability not being able to play music, maybe. No. I really don't remember the point. I just remember certain things of messing with the piano in my grandmother. Messing with the turntables, and doing lots of things like messing with the radio. Not really recording, but actually I was always playing kind of more live, which is paradox what I'm doing now, like lots of fixed pieces. Then actually started to be more and more interested to sound, and it turned into the moment when I decided to go to study sound, which started to be kind of really problematic because there was no anything like that, as far as I knew in Central Europe. So I left to UK, and I have to say that through London, Birmingham, and later on in the Netherlands, it kind of was lots of different moments of waking up. There was a permanent journey of waking up and sleeping down. But this kind of things of kind of journey. I never actually, even more and more, not privileging the sound, but in general, like sensuality of communication, more and more. And I'm working with the sound, but as well, with the sound, I'm making a movie, or I'm making on documentaries, radio. It's a kind of material. But this is maybe just a kind of interface of mine to doing other things. So I'm interested in many things, and sound is one of them. So maybe it was always like that, but I didn't realize it.
So it's been a very kind of natural journey for you. You've been kind of just very kind of open to discovering.
It's still very, it's full of discoveries every day. Today I was teaching and I just was thinking about every year you're teaching basically the same topics, right? Or lecturing the same topics, and it's not the same. You know? In particularly, always the same question is arising. And actually, these fundamental questions are pretty fundamental. You know, they are very. They are not very much changing. You know, it's just like they are the old questions, and we are more sensitive to certain layers of the question, expanding the world of questions. So yeah, and through the sound, it's a beautiful material and giving the other perspective. I think, you know, it's not necessarily the opposite to visual, but actually maybe learning us that there are other senses, not necessarily just 1, 2, 3, 5.
Maybe there's more. Maybe we'll keep discovering more. Yeah, and the film is such a beautiful combination of sound and image the whole way through. I wanted to kind of open up to all of you, really, just to kind of sort of there's certain philosophical questions that the film asks in its way. One of the things is there music after humanity? Because the film sort of seems to trace this root of the 20th century. Is almost a bit like a kind of musicology Adam Curtis in a way, I feel. I hope you don't mind me saying that. I mean that in a very complimentary way. Is there music after humanity?
Could I jump? I think music's a cultural phenomena. So of course there will be sound, but with no humans or culture, then we'll have sound possibly out there, and some other civilization or human or non-human life with their own culture. Maybe they'll have to make up their own music, but I think sound, there will be sound. Let's hope.
So is it like a kind of a tree falls in the woods kind of
it is, yeah.
Scenario? And another big theme is looking at alternative ways of approaching technology. The film looks at alternative ways of approaching technology. Why do you think this is an important thing to focus on?
The pile in the film, it's like a metaphor for the ecological message. Yeah, and it's about our world is full of technology and machines, and it's not, for me, it's not necessary to work with the new machines or new technology. Sometimes it's nice to combine old and new, or reuse the old. Mm-hmm. So for me it's like this, and I didn't think that there is one good way how we are thinking about this.
It was a kind of interface to the things we were interested to, and we think that kind of everybody knows, kind of a little bit heard about it, a little bit read about it, which kind of depicts lots of things about that. We got this kind of telephone list, how you say, the telephone book.
Oh, yes.
Kind of knowledge without lots of experiencing these things. And there was a first framework about to bringing certain ideas. It was not the idea to map everything, but certain ideas we were interested to, and we were able to get on the material, as well to think about them about this passing time, which is passing. And there is this idea of museum, and even more and more I'm thinking about something like this. Scrapyard, in the best sense of the moment where we are with a certain type of knowledge, and as well about idea of progress, and about really the things which kind of were overlooked or were not prioritized by the time from the many perspectives. And maybe the question of alternative is the word which have different connotation, but for me, like, the alternative is maybe not dogmatic, maybe like look on the context rather on this dogmatic use, maybe the questioning the things rather than to use them. And I think the technology very much, as understood in very deep sense of philosophy, is about this kind of questioning rather than about the usage. And I don't want to go very deep to Heidegger.
You're welcome to go as deep as you like. It's all good. Yeah.
And we have a really nice moment from this morning. Maybe it's really out of topic, but I think that it's interesting because Martin yesterday at evening bring to our 2-year-old son
his first drill, screwdriver. John, yeah.
Robotic drill. And our son woke up at 4 o'clock morning and really want to play with this drill. I told him no.
He wanted to play a drill.
You mean musically play the drill?
So he woke up at 7 and I give him this toy, and he playing with this toy like if the drill will be baby. Yeah. He put him a bottle with milk, yeah, and I put into the bed, and it was
at least cute.
Yeah, and also when I use my phone, I touch very gently to my phone, so maybe it's the same.
Yeah. I think there is this media approach to technology or art, media art, and even it's problematic this framework of electronic music. We very much struggled with naming the things. And even I think that definitely it's not about, for us, deeply about this history. We brought some things which are history, but as well, like there might be the music concrete, but there was much more about music concrete is about idea of artists as being a part of institution. So there's the other layer topics rather than some kind of linear things about. I don't know the roots of electronic music, and I think that there's lots of things which depicts other things maybe we could not see, but we kind of felt about this history which could be used, the kind of things which we still very much struggle how to deal with that story, and it's quite interesting thing. I think there is a 7th, or maybe 8th, I think it's 7th reissue of the Tom Holmes electronic and experimental music, the 7th, and it's quite interesting to see how 20 years was published, or is from the first print, like how it's changing the topics, how it's enriching all these things, So we have to do these snapshots about to see our history and about to don't lose the history really, as not necessarily history as something in the shelves. So and the part of this media approach is actually to find our relationship to the technology in that way, because we approach it as a never-ending progress.
It's similar. I think I've had long discussions with Johana and Martin late into the evening about these topics, and likewise I like to think of technology or alternative forms of technology really as a prism or as Martin mentioned, interface for looking at social and economic considerations as well. And I make synthesizers, but I've started asking myself, I'm using all of these electronic components, but can I really justify yet more e-waste, for example, yet more bits of technology that is kind of brought about through rampant consumerism, or can I use some of these components that were originally developed for weapons or other forms of commerce, and now I'm finding a use for them in a synthesizer, for example. So there's more and more considerations about how technology impacts not only on the sound making, but all those other things that connect to our everyday lives as well. So a piece may ridicule technology possibly to make a point, and also this idea of not just blindly following technology or the latest form of technology, the emperor's new clothes sort of thing. It's very much getting away from that. I like to see technology in the broadest sense. Possibly the hammer and the nail or the stone, for example, is also technological. And I think the film really captures some of that kind of mesh of technology, if you like, and how we can explore some of those things in making sound and music.
Yeah. And I really love the way what you said there, kind of in a really weird way, reminded me of Johana, what you were saying just now about your child's drill and shooting the drill like a child. Like there's always this kind of idea that technology is just an extension of the human hands in whatever form, isn't it? It's how we communicate, really, and it can be anything. Yeah, I was going to try and turn that into a question, but it just came out with a full stop in the end of a question mark. There.
And you kind of got this massive question about where we are, because the film is having certain spirit, and there is lots of things which are we interested, but in this kind of mood, we stop in a certain moment where we are now, maybe in now. Because there is the question of really the beliefs about techno-optimism, techno-skepticism, about technology as a prosthesis of our senses. And actually, when we're talking about movie and talking about film and all media, it's like, I think that we're there already, that I think that we got some extension of space, time. Now we can talk and we can see and we feel kind of something. So we're there, actually. We just need to somehow to do something with it.
Definitely. There are so many things as a child, the kind of science fiction that we probably had as children. Like if you look at Star Trek or something, the idea of using a kind of a device where you can talk to someone and see their image was science fiction only 30 years ago, when we were all a lot younger, and now it's the day to day. Can you see where it could go in a positive way? Can you see any possible futures for technology in how you're talking about how it can be nurtured rather than used to maybe dominate us?
I think that one of the very important thing and interesting thing for me with the rise of internet and interfacing is a kind of democratization of knowledge. And I think that for me, as I mentioned, to be a refugee kind of, because the technology you can approach from different things, but there is certain a certain power of owning technology as a knowledge. Of course, there is a reuse and dirty electronics approach about making hammer, but we're still having this kind of embedded, like the knowledge actually, not using it as it was intended to, is a knowledge. It's a kind of, but there is the other type of knowledge. So I see the very important aspect now is this kind of democratization and networking and global in the best way, as that we can actually use the situation about not being able to be presented as a possibility of sharing outside of the physical dimension. I think this is one of the positive message of those days, I believe, and there is lots of work out there.
Definitely. John, did you have any thoughts on that question as well?
Yeah, I think part of my interest in dirty electronics is this idea that it can be a radical. When I say radical, I mean something that could be made from the root. So, you know, the origin of the word. And, you know, if you've got the power to control these things and make the technology or have some kind of ownership of the technology, then ultimately it can be used for good. There's a long history of, you know, humankind in a situation where they've been exploited by technology. I'm living in Leicester, which is also close to the supposed birthplace of Ned Ludd, who was the founder of the Luddite movement. Luddites were also always considered anti-technology, but they were mainly against this idea that they were being exploited in terms of you know, the way in which their everyday lives were ruined in many ways by technology and their livelihoods, rather than being anti-technology. So I mean, ultimately, technology is not the bad thing. It's the humans that use it and then exploit other humans with that technology. So my future hopefully will be where, you know, some humans actually also get a say in how we use these technologies. Yeah.
So the technology is how people use it. Again, the sound is innocent, maybe.
Yes. Yes. Lights down. It's
I think that's what we've got time for today. So thank you so much for the chats. Thank you, Johana. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, John. The sound is innocent. I absolutely loved it myself personally. And it's streaming on Doc Nights with House of Fans London and Doc and Roll. And it's available till Sunday the 18th. At 7 p.m. Thank you so much for taking part.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.